I'm Trek Trav, and why don't you live long and prosper while using the Force and reversing the polarity throw? We're discussing weaponized nostalgia. So you may have noticed over the last 10, 15 years, what we've been getting is an increasingly steady amount of nostalgic properties being utilized to just increase cash flow to studios. The Star Wars franchise was sold to Disney for record $4 billion. The Star Trek franchise got molded into a Star Wars like Kelvin film. The Doctor Who franchise is in a different stage, and we'll talk about that later. And the MCU is just starting to reach its nostalgia phase. Within Star Wars, George Lucas himself had an idea for the sequel trilogy, unlike what was produced by Disney, who pretty much just went, no, we don't want to do that. We want to do something like we did before, or like you did before.
They decided they didn't want to use those stories. They decided they were going to go do their own thing. And so I decided, fine. But basically, I'm not going to try to. They weren't that keen to have me involved anyway. But at the same time, I said, I'm not going to. If I get in there, I'm just going to cause trouble.
George Lucas created episode 1, 2, and 3, and they look completely different to episodes 4, 5, and 6. Completely different in style, tone. You had the same characters, you had the same mythology, but he was expanding and building upon his world. He wasn't relying on nostalgia. He just knew that the fans would watch this and they wanted the same feel. You had John Williams doing the music. The overall feel of the films had enough there to be recognizably Star Wars while he was pushing the envelope with visual effects and with storytelling. We got a surprisingly in-depth political series of films for a guy who started off with Star Wars, which is a great film, but your basic action adventure sci-fi film. What we have with Star Trek is we had a franchise that had Star Trek Enterprise. They tried to do something different. They had to try to do something new, and Star Trek Enterprise failed.
The ratings of Star Trek were steadily, they weren't there with. I think it started actually on Voyager.
It started on Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine numbers started falling, and Voyager's numbers started falling. It all decayed.
And what they started to do at the end of Star Trek Enterprise is tap into that nostalgia. And it was a part of the thing. By the end of Star Trek Enterprise, they'd begun the Federation. They'd introduced more characters of nostalgia baitiness. Enterprise took a place in the timeline that was meant to be different from the others, explaining things that we wanted to know. How is that different from Star Trek of now, where we're in Discovery and Strange New Worlds and we're pre-Kirk again? Is Discovery and Strange New Worlds rely on some basic knowledge of the Star Trek universe. They have mentions, they have characters and plots, which are ripped strictly from the universe. Strange New Worlds in particular is using story beats and characters to draw old fans in to watch this show. Discovery tried to be different, having a bit more space on Netflix, until they reached season 3 and they realized the fans were just complaining. So they switched back to a model of, we've gone far into the future, there's no continuity issues, we can throw these little nods at you for your nostalgia to get your little member berries going. And Strange New Worlds very much did the opposite of that, in which they didn't try to readjust the program. They, from the get-go, this was nostalgia. This is the Enterprise. This is Captain Pike. This is Uhura. These are established characters that you already have an attachment to. So you've already got an audience tuning in to see what you're doing with those characters. Star Trek Picard's the same. Fans of TNG very much wanted to see Patrick Stewart as Picard. They want to see the TNG crew back. So they tapped into a character which had basically had his end. Nemesis, although they claim it had a natural continuing point, really didn't. It felt like the last film. It made sense for it to be the last film. And then we had Picard with mixed reviews. So the first season of Picard, they tried to do a little bit different while continuing the story from Star Trek Nemesis. Season 2 of Picard very much did things that we'd done before. We had Q thrown in, we had Guinan thrown in, we had the Borg Queen thrown in, we had the Borg thread itself thrown in, we had Starfleet ships. So we had a bucket full of nostalgia. And it looks like Picard Season 3 is just going to throw in more nostalgia. Strange New Worlds has thrown us in the Gorn. They've thrown us episodes familiar of previous stories. They've thrown us in Spock's pairing with T'Pring. They have given us the nostalgia through the characters. Discovery, once again, still being the one that uses the least amount of nostalgia, and that's probably because Discovery's audience is younger than the other two audiences. I am in my late 30s, and my primary interest is Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Strange New Worlds because I know these characters. Star Trek Discovery I love, but it's not the same Star Trek as I watched when I was younger. In regards to Doctor Who's reached a point where the show has been on the air for about 17 years. We're at the 60th anniversary, which is generally a big nostalgia fest. But what you've seen since pretty much 2010 when Stephen Moffat took over is a general increase in using nostalgic elements to get the viewers in, such as the Cybermen, the Daleks, the Weeping Angels, different doctors coming back, different Silurians, basically to bring you in. There's references to the Master. There's a reference to in the 50th anniversary. There's a reference to the 20th anniversary special. And what this is Doctor Who trying to nostalgia bait you, but Doctor Who doesn't have one key ingredient to this. It doesn't have a franchise. It has Torchwood and it has Sarah Jane, but they're not on the air anymore. And as we approach the 60th, we know that David Tennant and Catherine Tate are coming back from Series 4 of Doctor Who, arguably the best time during Doctor Who. Where they're bringing back a familiar villain, they're bringing back familiar settings. Jodie Whittaker's time is up, and Jodie Whittaker's time is probably the biggest example of this nostalgia baiting. In Series 11, which was Jodie Whittaker's first, they had no original villains except for in the New Year's Day special where the Daleks show up. Otherwise, it was completely unique stories with no attachment to previous history. They barely mention on the fact that she'd just been a Scottish man. She literally just says, I was a Scottish man. We don't really have the references. We might have a few little passing words from Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, but the series was starting afresh and anew and trying to build on a new, fresh premise. Fans didn't like it. They felt like it had a woke agenda. They felt like it was focusing too much on political issues and not enough fun. Jodie Whittaker was given stories that didn't seem to be as strong or impactful as those older ones. So we get to Series 12, and they ramp up the nostalgia berries. In Series 12, they basically bring back the Master, they bring back the Cybermen. There is a Daleks episode on New Year's Day again. They're bringing back those enemies to bring that familiarity back to the franchise, to bring that sense of people going, oh, I know them. Oh, why don't you give it a go? And then we get to Series 13, which is Doctor Who Flux, which is a series of an amazing new bad villain with a lot of nostalgia thrown in there. You have the Sontarans, you have the Weeping Angels, you have the Time Lords, you have a bucket of history thrown into the franchise to get people to watch again. And that's kind of where Enterprise was at the end. Enterprise was very much trying to get you to watch again because they're building the Federation and they're doing all these amazing things. There are different points in the franchise, but Doctor Who is about to head into its nostalgia berry, and it's weaponized nostalgia of, let's get David Tennant, the most popular Doctor, Catherine Tate, the most popular companion, and put them back in the show for a couple of episodes next year. Star Wars, George Lucas had many ideas, brand new ideas that he gave to Disney. He pretty much said, I've given you my ideas, take them, use them. And they said, no. We don't want anything new. We just want to copy and paste what you did before into a new franchise. Star Trek's the same thing. They haven't actually given us 100% a new Star Trek show with no connection to the previous shows. They haven't given us, look, you're always going to have references to a universe within a universe. But Star Trek Discovery, Michael Burnham's related to Spock. They're trying to create that nostalgic connection. In Picard, you've got Patrick Stewart in there, so you immediately got that connection. In Strange New Worlds, it's meant to be feel and have the tone of TOS and TNG. You naturally have that connection. What we don't have is a show that goes, here's a crew on a spaceship, they're exploring space. This is a completely different crew. They're not related to anyone. There's no familiar settings. We might have a few aliens from the original show to world build, but otherwise, this is a completely unique show. The MCU is headed into a completely different section of this. So what we saw with after Avengers Endgame is a lot of the multiverse coming out. And the multiverse allowed them to grab onto these weaponized nostalgia and bring back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield for Spider-Man No Way Home. You've got Loki, who is obviously a character which everybody loves. WandaVision played into that nostalgia of the 50s and the 60s and those old-timey shows, and then built its own thing. The superhero genre and comic books in general are built around the nostalgia of what people used to read when they were a kid. The thing is with the MCU is they've told their big story and now they're trying to find their new big story, and they're going into the nostalgia to get it. For example, Patrick Stewart, here's my link to Star Trek. Patrick Stewart coming back as Charles Xavier. Other actors playing different versions of the roles. Captain Carter. It gets you going, oh, this is amazing. I want to see this change to my universe. But really, they're not doing that. Really, they're going, I'm going to put this in. You're going to watch my show and you're going to buy our products. For example, I have Star Trek products everywhere. And I will buy more Star Trek products, I'm sure. I have all the DVDs, I have all the Blu-rays of Star Trek and Doctor Who and Star Wars. I am not a huge fan of the MCU. I actually prefer DC films. I'm sorry. I like my Superman, but that's nostalgia for me because I used to watch Lois and Clark. I used to watch the Christopher Reeve films, and I really, really love those characters. Superman and Lois is amazing on the CW. What we have, and this is across the board within our franchises, but also within our actual day-to-day lives, is an appeal to our nostalgia so other people can make money. We see this within our politics, with Donald Trump appealing to an older demographic of whom are not quite as progressive and up to date with things in the world, and he gets them to donate to him and to take the money off him because that's what they want. They want the money from the nostalgia of these franchises. Star Wars felt that got hit with that hard because they produced a lackluster, in my opinion, sequel trilogy and a few spin-off films where the only good one was Rogue One. And what they're seeing now is, oh, actually, they need to create a new universe. They did it with The Mandalorian. They did it with... They're doing it with Ahsoka, where even Ahsoka is kind of nostalgia. Obi-Wan Kenobi is nostalgia. Its whole premise is you want to see Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader get together again. The Star Wars operates on nostalgia. The entire streaming platform works off of nostalgia. They've weaponized this against you. They're using this. Governments are using this. Your entertainment industry is using this. Basically, if you have fond or familiar feelings of the past towards a thing or towards an idea, then you are being weaponized to buy products or to give money to companies and people. Donald Trump's a clear example. He had a help me fight the fraud in the election and ended up just pocketing 95% of that money. Read up the facts. That is the case. If you're a Trump fan, this is the wrong channel for you. So we have franchises being thrown at us left, right, and center. Everything is getting monetized and monetized. What we have now is films that are original, not doing anything, and films filled with nostalgia that are actually going somewhere and making a lot of the money. And that's because they're relying on us to sell them. They're relying on us to go, oh, I remember this, I love it. Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, which is getting a franchise on Netflix. There is so many things that are happening in this world where we are looking to the past to try and make money off it. Companies and things like retro clothes, retro shoes, nostalgia. You see it and you go, oh, I saw that in this movie. These are things that are happening right now, and it's a big problem with the world, because looking to the past isn't the way to move forward. And with Star Trek, which is meant to be a progressive look forward show, it's actually not progressing the show. We are just sitting back and watching the show just run around in circles in its own wading pool. Discovery, which is arguably the most original of the new Trek series, the same as Deep Space Nine was back in the day, Discovery has a fresh look at it. It's in the 29th century. It's in the same universe, has enough references, but they're not overflowing. Star Wars, you had nothing but Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and Princess Leia, and they tried to cut them down, but then they had to revert to Rey is related to Palpatine. He's got Star Destroyers, and he's built up a whole empire again. They had to resort back to that nostalgia to get you back after The Last Jedi when they tried to do something different. The MCU's the same. A lot of people were talking about maybe the MCU is done. They bring you Spider-Man No Way Home. They bring you Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Doctor Who, the ratings have gone down. What do? They bring back David Tennant and Catherine Tate. We are living in an age where they're using our love of things to make money. They're not making things new or new things for us to fall in love with. They're just redoing the old stuff, hoping whether we hate it or like it, we'll watch it because that love was there initially, riding on the coattails of our love, weaponizing our nostalgia. What do you think? Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Come back tomorrow or next day, or just watch some more videos now. And I've been Trek Trav. Live long and prosper. May the Force be with you. Reverse the polarity of the neutron flow. And I am Iron Man.